So let's jump into introductions. My name is Michael Blodgett, and I serve the marketing team here as the Director of Demand Generation. I've been here at One Day for about a year and a half now, and I'm so grateful to be a part of the team here. So fun fact about me, my first job out of college was actually in multifamily. I worked in the business development team at Appfolio. So if you're on this webinar today, I may have given you a cold call at some point in 2016. So throw that out there. Today I'll be moderating this panel with some of the most respected minds in the industry. So let's get to meet our panelists. I want to start off with Sherry Freitas, a Senior Managing Director of Operations at RangeWater Real Estate. She has more than 20 years of multifamily experience, and she currently oversees the operational performance of the firm, focusing specifically on business intelligence, strategic growth, client relations, and during her career, she's overseen nearly 100,000 units. So we're so honored to have you here today. Welcome, Sherry.
Hello, everybody.
Awesome. Next up, we have Virginia Love, Industry Principal at Entrata. She joined Entrata in 2019 and works closely with their marketing, product, and sales teams, really being the liaison between those departments and the multifamily industry. She has extensive expertise in the different challenges facing the industry, as well as the emerging technologies and innovations that address those issues. So she's well known both at Entrata and throughout the industry as a mentor and really an authority when it comes to marketing and leasing. So Virginia, we're so glad you're here today with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Third, we're joined by Gray Lane. He's a Director of Digital Marketing at JMG Asset Living. So Gray is a talented digital marketing professional. He has a demonstrated track record in the multifamily industry. His specific experience and expertise falls under marketing tech, digital marketing approaches, analytics, branding design, and overall marketing strategy. So Gray, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Appreciate it, Michael. Happy to be here, man.
Awesome. Last but not least, we have our own Mike Davis, our Senior VP of Multifamily here at Convey by One Day. Mike is a seasoned veteran in the multifamily industry, to say the least, bringing more than 2 decades of experience to today's panel. So before joining our team last year, he was the VP of Enterprise Sales for over 14 years at RealPage, where he served as really an advisor between his customer base and all the data analytics tools that RealPage provides to the real estate industry. So we're so happy he's brought his talents over to the Convey team here, and I'm personally glad he goes by Mike instead of Michael, just to avoid any confusion. So welcome, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's be honest, y'all. I could have spent an entire hour walking of the webinar going through the introductions with all the talent, the innovation, and accomplishments that we have represented here. And that's not an understatement. So on behalf of Convey, I just wanted to express my gratitude to each of you for investing your time and your effort into this conversation. So now, setting the stage before we jump into our questions today. What's the reason we're all here? I believe we're all in the same boat. One of the main pressing questions in the multifamily industry to the leaders are, what is this year going to look like? So it's already February, and I think it's safe to say that a few curveballs have already come our way. And over the last 2 years, at this point, it's safe to say that we've all come to expect the unexpected. So now it's a matter of figuring out, how do we lead our teams and continue to innovate, knowing that there are going to be adversity and there's going to be challenges, many of which are beyond our control. So the reality is everyone's trying to adjust their sights to continue to thrive and prosper in this new era of multifamily. So today, thank you to all of our audience for joining us. We're going to be taking a deep dive into topics like employee retention, recruitment, operations, sales, storytelling, technology, and maybe a little bit more, time permitting. So I'm going to kick it off with our first topic, and one that I'm sure is top of mind for not only the panel, but everyone here in attendance. Let's talk about the staffing shortage and employee retention. So before I jump into the question, I want to throw a quick stat out. The National Apartment Association, NAA, recently surveyed more than 1,000 property managers to really gauge the impact of the global talent shortage. So the results are pretty revealing. And then when they were asked what their biggest post-pandemic challenges were, more than half of them said that HR, staffing, and recruitment was at the very top of their list, more than half. So given that the employee experience is even more important with the staffing shortages facing the industry, how is your organization prioritizing retention? And what strategies are you seeing the most success with? So Gray, I'm going to pass it over to you first for this one.
Sure. So obviously this is a huge problem right now. And I will say one thing that I wanted to start off with is my primary responsibilities are, property marketing and then corporate branding and all that kind of stuff. I have never had more requests from HR for assistance with recruitment, whether that's digital graphics or anything like that, than I ever have in the last few months. So obviously it's a huge issue. I guess the first thing that I would want to talk about here is we really had to, ensure that our benefits were competitive with everyone else and offer a little bit more of a progressive structure there. So that's the first thing that I think we kind of looked at. Second thing that I've always been a huge fan of our mentor program that we had here at JMG. And I think we've really leaned into that during this time to look for more and identify more leaders that are, relatable for on-site personnel and really empower and embolden them and put them in the driver's seat and that kind of thing. I think by doing that, rather than, some stuffy corporate person at the top being responsible for it, I think was really, instrumental in helping make sure that our teams are well-rounded and, staying put where they are, doing a great job.
Love that. Thank you, Gray. Virginia, you're next up.
Yeah, sure. Entrata's always been a very in-person brand and culture. So whether it's a customer event or a client event or associate events, everything has been very hands-on, sort of in your face, sort of, fun and extremely geared toward our values. So we had to focus a lot of things of our experience that we usually have for our customers and our associates, and sort of, use that word pivot that we've all used so much and look at it a different way. And it was a real challenge as a company. We were not traditionally a remote environment. Majority of the jobs were in Utah, so we made a change there. So that forced us to kind of look at the way that we were going to communicate our culture and continue to nurture our associates, let our clients feel, that we are operating based on our values. And that was, like I said, it was a challenge. One of the things that we did that during all of this is, as well as adding like almost an entire new leadership stack, is we brought Slack in as a method to communicate to each other. And it's funny because it's been like a blessing and a curse, right? Like it's something new, it's something that you're not used to. And there's all these crazy channels that are coming up, but what's been so interesting is that because we've been focusing on relationships, not only with our clients, but with each other and with our department and how all of our different departments work together, having those sort of common hobbies or interests. I mean, there's one for houseplants, there's one for Bigfoot followers, there's one for just the women of Entrata, football, you name it. But it's very interesting how about something that small, but you give people an opportunity to have something to connect to the other folks that they work with outside of a work topic, how much that fosters such good creativity and makes everybody sort of, be on the same page. It's been a real game changer for us for the past year.
I love that. A huge part of, being valued and retaining employees is communication and just giving them a place where they'll feel heard and feel like they're part of a bigger community. So I love that point, Virginia. Sherry, tossing it over to you.
Thanks. I align with Gray when he talked about mentoring and shadowing. We have a really extensive shadowing program to give people an idea of kind of like what our career paths look like. We historically, especially when it came to maintenance positions, have really not thought about a career path. I mean, we thought moving from a grounds to tech to senior or a service director was like their career, but what happens then, right? So what are the other opportunities? Some other things we've really worked on is making sure that everybody stayed aligned and really was aware of what our company vision is. And we've done that through doing some in-person, like kind of small, like fireside chats with our team members that we really got to sit down and get re-engaged with them, because we all know that the last 2 years have been really super challenging for in-person type events. We've obviously done the same thing, PTO, and looked at our bonus structure. But, we also did something because we started to see that people were struggling personally because of all of this pandemic. Like people were just like things just didn't affected them differently now. And so we've really made a conscious effort to, we've done this twice over the last year where we've reached out to every single team member and made that personal contact with them just to see how they were, not to say, hey, what are you doing? Are you doing your job? But, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? And so, I think the other thing is really being conscious of work-life balance. Sometimes those people that work at home, I worked at home for 6 years with my previous role. And, sometimes you don't shut it off. And so how do we empower them or allow them to set boundaries that will help them have a better work-life balance?
Awesome. Great insight there, Sherry. Mike, tossing over to you to wrap it up for this one.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it. It's interesting. One Day's been around and we've been in the senior living space for a number of years and very successful there, but Convey is new to the market. So one of the things that we're in that hyper growth mode. So I think retention kind of starts during the hiring process initially. You need to set good expectations and let people know this is, with our organization, we're not an established that we've been around 20 years and we're kind of in autopilot. We are going to be changing and pivoting. I love the use of the word pivot because I've probably said it a million times over the last year, but it really is true. You have to set the right expectations during the hiring process. Know there's going to be change, and we're in hyper growth mode, and we're doing it during a crazy time in this industry that we've never seen before. So there's lots of challenges there. We know the great resignation is going on. So you have to let those people know there's going to be change, but we're here together as a team. And just be honest, there's some people that this might not be the best fit for. We totally understand that. But the ones that are here, we're in this together. We're building something special. So I think if you can relate that at the beginning, you save headaches down the road.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. That's a great point, Mike. Following up that question in a similar vein, what are some creative ways that y'all are celebrating the good work that your teams have done in the past year? So, Gray, I'll toss it over to you to share some of the creative ways that y'all are celebrating your team.
Sure. So I think part of this comes down to how we are able to create, creative incentives for our staffs. And one of the ways we've done that is we've kind of tried to look to gamify. I love that word, by the way, gamify operations and create, kind of that healthy sense of competition amongst our own teams and amongst, other players in the market. I think it was received very well. And I think that, who doesn't love being, rewarded for their accomplishments, quickly. Otherwise, I would say that our organization really was a huge fan of what NAA did the past couple of years with the Apartment Teams Day initiative, with kind of honoring the essential workers in our space, which is everybody. I was really a huge fan of that, and I loved to be able to recognize our teams for that, as well as, our PM Careers Week. I think we were more involved this year than we ever have been, really, just to kind of shine the light on the great work that our teams have been doing throughout, the chaos of the last 2 years. The other thing is, we've always had an internal awards program, and it's always been fantastic. But this year was like the best internal awards program that we've ever had. And a lot of it focused on innovation and resilience. And, whereas normally sometimes the internal awards may have gotten, swept underneath the rug or kind of fallen down in the stack, this one was like a news broadcast. We had leaders from the organization throughout the place, highlighting all the great things that our teams had done. And it was very well received organization wide, and I think that it was something special we were able to do that I think ultimately put us in a good spot.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, people want to know that the work that they're doing is valued and seen. So I love that. Great. Virginia, we're going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, just real quickly, at Entrata, our success is our client success, and it's been great to see how they've had like virtual events or in-person events are coming back, and how they involve us and celebrating their successes being a client of Entrata, and to be included in those celebrations and the goals that they're setting going forward and expanding our partnerships. That's been the best part for us.
Love that. Sherry, how about you?
We take every opportunity to celebrate wins, big or small. I mean, I think I've always been of the, I also do some celebrating of some failures, because then at least maybe we've learned some lessons too. So, but we're getting ready to have our first in-person Inspire conference coming up at the end of March. And so we're super excited. It's been off for 2 years. And so our teams are just getting all pumped for that. I think that we're working, and, we have a partnership with One Day, and we're working with, creative ways of using that video component to reach out to our team members to say thank you. Because I know I still have note cards that executives sent me probably when I was leasing apartments, eons ago that, you know, they recognized me, and those meant something to me because it took time for that. So I think that my comment will be just making sure that we're appreciating through the ways that will mean something to them, and not always that, you know, hey, I'm going to take you out to dinner, because people may not want to have dinner with me, but they might want to have dinner with their family, right? And so, but we take we take every opportunity to celebrate something exciting. So we do have a celebration cart that kind of goes through when we know that there's something big that's happened in the corporate office, and there's usually a lot of noise that comes with that, and maybe a few adult beverages, but you know, we're going to take the time to celebrate. So
Nice. I love that. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting to see and hear all these different things that everyone is doing. One of the things we're doing here at One Day is we have a program that's morphed a little bit. At one point, it was new digs, and we voted on someone to go work remotely for a week and on our dime, and just to, you know, everybody was stuck at home with COVID, so it was like, if you're going to do this, go to a fun place, go rent an VRBO or an Airbnb. We've morphed that into a new recharge program, which is a long weekend. We do the same thing, but you know, with the other program, it was great, but you were also working. This is just go take some time with your family, your friends, do whatever you want to do in our dime. Go get a Verbo, go get an Airbnb, and take a trip and have a relaxing weekend, and just, you know, on us. And so it's something that we as an executive team vote on, and it's not limited to any one department. The entire organization is eligible for that. So lots of exciting things that we're doing, but I personally love that one.
Yes, that one's great. Virginia, you're going to love this. We also have a Celebrate the Wins Slack channel. So it's great for, just all the different departments coming together and celebrating like a win in client success or win on the product team, where everyone can see the success across the country. I think that's, you know, super helpful, not just to celebrate within your department, but for everyone to see how their work is impacting the bottom line and the business as a whole. So love that. Well, now that we've got that big topic covered, let's zoom a little bit back out. So as I mentioned before, over the last 24 months, the multifamily industry has really come to expect the unexpected and endured what we'll call a state of discomfort, whether it's with COVID-19, staffing struggles, supply chain issues, and so much more. So when it comes to this next topic of really adapting to forces outside our control, when it comes to that, what are some of the things your organization is doing to innovate and reduce some of that discomfort this year? So Virginia, you're going to lead this one off for us.
Yeah, sure. You know, as I sit back and I reflect on the last really, 12 months, and we take a look at what everybody has been through, and I look at operators, our clients and others, I can mostly fit everybody in two buckets just based from where I sit. There's those that kind of put their foot on their gas during this and saw an opportunity to really, press on and move forward. The industry has often said throughout this process that we might have pushed technology forward anywhere from 5 to 7 years. And then there's the other ones, the other customers and operators in the space that chose not to put their foot on the gas, but chose to sort of stay where they are, hold steady, reinforce the things that they were already doing. They weren't going backward. They were just kind of slowing down a little bit and coasting, right? There's no right answer, right? It's what was right for that customer and those clients out there in the multifamily space. Those companies that thought they were making decisions based on the site level, I heard from a lot of folks that said, you know what, we weren't. We thought we were making decisions that were the best thing for our site folks to be able to manage properties and generate income and lease apartments, when in fact, we were kind of holding them down with all these heavy processes and procedures. So that was a refreshing thing to see. As Grace said, these folks are essential workers, they're essential employees, they always have been, but the highlight has been that it was drawn attention to that. The biggest discomfort that I see is change management. Everybody wants innovation, but at what cost? They're like, oh yeah, we want all of that. We want to do all that. But then they see a price and they immediately, recoil back and go, well, we can't afford to be innovative. We can't afford to make those sort of changes. And it's going to cost money and time and training, and how we're going to get the word out and how we're going to make it sustainable. And a lot of that is about balance. We can't recommend automation enough. One thing that we see is that the ILSs are just working super duper hard at providing so many leads that are coming out to the properties. And I'll talk about this in another question, but there's a lot of these leads go unanswered for the very reason that the site teams, like we just talked about, shortage of staff, and they also have a ton of other responsibilities. So anything that you can automate that is a touch point along the customer journey that needs to be done, has to be done. It's going to do nothing but give your site teams more opportunity to generate income, focus on those customers, create amazing experience for their customers that that stand out from the competition. So that's something that we're super hyper focused on, that we know that not only do our clients need, but the industry needs to adapt.
Love that. Thank you, Virginia. Sherry, I'm going to pass it over to you to go next.
I'm going to piggyback off of some of the things that Virginia said. When I joined RangeWater, and I've only been here about 7 months, one of my first, I had heard a lot of the discomfort out there about, oh, we have so much to do, we're on the front lines, and we've had to change the way we do our business. And I actually moved into an apartment in the middle of all this, so I got to experience it from the viewpoint of being a resident too. And we've always kind of, as an industry, been resistant to change a little bit, but then when we do introduce change, we usually introduce a whole bunch of it at one time. And we think it's all going to be great because it's the latest sparkly, shiny thing that's out there. And one of the things I would say is that we've taken a step back to really make sure that, number one, we're using the technology and the programs that we have today effectively and efficiently, because there's a lot of components today that we offer that we may not be using fully. And that takes stress off of our on-site teams, and anything that we can do to make them more efficient and to increase their productivity is better, right? Because, if we have 5 different programs and they don't talk to each other, that's 5 different logins. That's 5 different, programs that they have to go in and out of to get just one job done. And it impacts the customer experience as well as the user experience. So, I've really been focused on how do we make our systems work better for us and how do we make them integrated so that it flows. Some of the other things we did, and this goes back to kind of the first questions that we asked was, when COVID hit, people got COVID and they were on our front lines. They probably got it from being on the front lines, right? And we decided that we were not going to penalize them for having COVID because, a lot of times in the beginning we said, oh, you can use your sick time and your PTO, but what happened is that they used it all up and then they couldn't take a break and they were burning out. And so we have kind of gone away from that and really tried to focus on, let's make sure that, you still have the ability to take some time off and enjoy your life outside of COVID. I think that we constantly reach out and, we've done team member surveys and we are constantly communicating with our teams to make sure that we understand what the underlying impacts are of some of the things that we're thinking about doing. And so I would say, the more we can communicate as a group to let people know what the change is and why it's so important. Like, we're never really good at implementing change, but really being, very conscious of every step of that change so that we can walk people through and maybe not rush as much of it out there. So, we certainly don't have all the answers, but we're learning as we go too.
For sure. I think we're all in the same boat with you there, Sherry. Mike, you're next up.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of discomfort out there. We're dealing with a lot of things that we've never had to deal with before, from the work spaces and everybody, COVID's everywhere. We hope it's going away, but it kind of sneaks back in here and there. So, we have to be, in my opinion, you have to be flexible. You have to have empathy for the folks. So there are people that are probably more nervous about the COVID issues than others. Some like the comfort of working at home. Some like the hybrid, like we do. We're a hybrid organization, so work from home, work in the office a couple days a week. But you also have to have understanding that some of these folks probably would never want to come in if they didn't have to, because they're concerned with COVID. There could be health issues, there could be age issues. I'm the guy that shut our office down for a couple of weeks or a month after catching COVID.
Nice.
Right before our kickoff meeting. So I looked at it, I was like, it is what it is. You can't get away from it. But having that empathy and understanding that everyone is different, then when people are working at home, you have to deal with the technology issues and the things that come up, right? So we shut our office down when I tested positive. We shut it down within an hour, and things had to shift for the remainder of the week. So just being flexible, understanding what people are going through, and having some empathy, not only with your employees, but also with your residents, because we're in a flux, and where this is going, I wish I had the answer, but we're not over it. How long this continues, I don't know, but I think it's going to continue for a while.
Thanks, Mike. Gray, you can wrap this one up for us.
Should be pretty quick to wrap up, because the people that preceded me on this pretty much nailed everything. First of all, Virginia Love, I love the dichotomy about you said about how everyone falls into two buckets. We absolutely fall into that first bucket where we kind of hit the gas because we knew that we had to do something to adapt, and a lot of that did ultimately involve automation and that kind of thing, especially from a marketing standpoint, trying to do what we could to automate that top of funnel stuff so that we don't have associates sitting there getting pounded with garbage leads that may go nowhere and all that kind of stuff. So automation was key. And I also wanted to say that, we really tried to use our systems in more of a collaborative approach than we had. With people being out at one site, we were able to, move leasing agents over virtually to be able to pick up some of the slack there and all that kind of thing, which is a great process to have. And it took something like this to really, foster a need for it. So I definitely was a huge fan of that, and I admire our associates' ability to respond. Also, I totally agree with what Mike said about the empathy factor. We're all going through this, resident, vendor, operators, everyone is. So keeping that grain of respect and understanding what's going on and how everyone's dealing with this craziness, and keeping that at the forefront of how you kind of guide yourself, I think is really important. I think our associates would say that the residents, we always say that sometimes our residents can be a little bit crazy, but I think the craziness has been ramped up lately, and rightfully so. So trying to creatively leverage our communication tools to absolve some of that craziness, I think has been a huge thing for us, and a lot of that just involves around communication, automation, and empathy, like what was said before me.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Gray. Despite some of the hurdles and challenges we've just discussed, a reality is demand for multifamily rental units was outstanding and solid in 2021, and it's expected to remain positive this year. So next topic of the shifting sales cycle. Sherry, we'll have you first for this one. How do you see the sales cycles changing with prospective residents in multifamily this year and beyond?
Well, I will say first, we were forced to kind of change how we do business because of COVID. And it probably was a great thing in that means, because we had some of this technology before, we just weren't using it, right? And so now it's, and I was actually on a panel one time, and there was a gentleman on there who was like, yeah, well, we're going to go back to, everything we did before. I was like, no, we're not. So I would say that, I think we're, looking at how do we do business the way that prospect wants to do business with us. And so making sure we have options that also have touch points that make it personalized. So, it could be everything goes through a call center to a virtual tour to a self-guided tour. And then if it's interrupted, then somebody jumps in and adds that personal touch. We have a lot of products that support that. But then we still have those people that walk in the door on a, Saturday morning and want to lease an apartment that way. And so making sure that we have all of those bases covered. We are having to educate people about what the options are, because, historically it wasn't really like that. And we all expected them. And we've had to kind of change the mindset of our team members too, to say, offer them these opportunities, because it just makes it easier. and it carries over to the sales from the sales cycle to the resident cycle, because it's those constant touches. We may not see them coming into the office, walking their dog, bringing their dogs in, although we have a lot more dogs today. Everybody got a dog. But, I think with 2021 and the robust economy, we've been fat and happy all year, and it's been great. But I think, the sales cycle happens faster. People are deciding quicker because we have limited availability. Our rates have gone higher, so we've had to spend more time getting our prospects to understand what that supply and demand has done to our rental rates. We've also been working, we don't want to open the back door too much, but we also knew that there was some, turnover that might actually be beneficial to our investors. So, I think we've just had to make sure that we are able to adapt, in the housing market the way it is too. If we have people that are empty nesters like me who move in thinking I'm going to buy a house, we have to be flexible with their lease terms. So, I think the big thing here is just being flexible and being willing to do business how our customers want us to do business with them.
Love that. Mike, what are your thoughts on this one?
Sherry nailed it. We have to learn to sell how our buyers want to be sold to, right? That is, to me, that's key. Nobody's the same. Everyone does things a little different ways. So you have to be flexible enough to sell the way your buyers want to buy. And it's not uniform across the industry. I know Virginia and I are both on the supplier, vendor is a bad word, but we're on the supplier side. So we have to better understand what the Grays and the Sherrys of the world are going through, and change our approach to help serve them with their with all the new changes that they're going through, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So Gray, next up for this one, what are your thoughts?
One of the things that we kind of touched on when COVID was becoming a thing was that screen time was increasing overwhelmingly, whether that's televisions, computers, tablets, cell phones, everything. So I think in terms of the sales cycle, Sherry hit the nail on the head as well. It's so easy to look at a lot of different product very, very quickly. So we look for creative ways to really convey our competitive advantage, a little bit more robustly, whether that's a video messaging platform or anything like that. With short sales cycles or shortening sales cycles and, limited availability, we had to prioritize things that made us unique in the marketplace. And a lot of that did come down to, responsiveness and all that kind of stuff, and making sure that we were, following back up quickly and make sure we were answering those phone calls. And if they weren't, that they were being handled elsewhere and all that kind of stuff. So really, I think that the biggest thing for us is how to convey your competitive advantage quickly and efficiently. And I also love what Mike said about wanting to be sold people wanting to be sold how they want to be sold. The on-demand economy is very much a real thing with, the rise of the Ubers of the world and open tables and all this kind of stuff. You can make a decision or a purchase intent relatively quickly with a few keystrokes or a few movements of your fingers and that kind of thing. And I think that, in multifamily, we need to adapt to that as well, whether that's, self-guided touring and self-scheduling and all that kind of stuff that allows people to control their sales cycle on their own terms, and also allow us to be a huge part of it too. So totally agree with what was said.
That's a great point, Gray. Virginia, you can wrap this one up for us.
Sure. In my 30-year career in multifamily, the first thing you always see when things go good, training always gets dropped off. And I notice there's a lot of lack of sales training. We do a lot of training in technology and processes, but a lot of folks that are new to the industry, especially the ones that have come in over the past couple of years, haven't gotten a lot of really good sales training, and they don't understand how to build out a sales strategy. And while, customer experience and customer service is super important, a good salesperson, if you've ever shopped at a really nice store, a really good store that has incredible sales like Nordstrom's or Neiman Marcus, they know there's no service without the sale. They got to sell you something so they can give you that good customer service. And so much of what we're looking at in our industry now is like, we look at old KPIs. We talk about not how many leads we need, but how many leads we can get. There's that old number that we've been measuring. Sherry and I've had the honor to work with Sherry at 2 companies. So we've been friends for a long time, but we would always get really wrapped up in year-over-year traffic growth. Well, how many leads did we have last February? And what about the year before that? We don't have to guess on that anymore. There's marketing dashboards. There are ways that you can look at this data a little bit closely and know what you need and only buy what you need when you need it. And I think the biggest issue for me about that is like when you align the right source with the right channel, like it'd be phone or text or chat or whatever, when you can align those two, that's where the rubber meets the road and how your marketing is performing. And then it tells your salespeople, when this happens, you do Y. And then you can recreate that magic in a bottle across your portfolio. But the hardest part of that is making sure you take that step back, taking a look at your team and going, okay, yes, it's a customer service job, but this is, leasing apartments is a sales position, making sure that they have those tools where they can see that sales cycle, be where the customer is. That's the most important part of the business. Until somebody leases an apartment, nothing happens. I say all the time, they're the only ones generating income. Everybody else is an expense.
That's right.
Great points. Great points. Well, great. That wraps up our topic of the shifting sales cycle. Moving into another topic, and I'll keep it a little vague or open here, but technology. So, if you go to G2 or Capterra and you look at all the different SaaS platforms out there and multifamily, they're going to be hundreds. And if you took the time to evaluate each one, that would be a full-time job, if not more. So what are your all's thoughts on technology in your communities today? Figuring out and prioritizing what makes sense most for your communities, and how has that role changed through the last year and now into the new year? So thoughts on technology and how it's shifted over the past year. Gray, will open it up with you today.
If there's one benefit to the last couple of years, it's that what we talked about earlier is that we were kind of forced to adapt and forced to innovate and forced to look at things that we may not have been able to look at previously. The core of our business is third-party management, and it is incredibly difficult to get some owners to understand the need and the requirements for technology in our space. All they want to look at is ROIs and that kind of thing. That said, I think that, they've really been way more receptive over the last couple of years to some of the ideas that we've had that may involve, leveraging different technology from a communication standpoint or from, enhanced digital assets, virtual touring, all that kind of stuff that requires an investment and is, essential to the success of a modern multifamily community that may have been on the back burner previously. So I think that, for the industry as a whole, that the old adage of, multifamily is a little bit behind. I don't necessarily know that that's as much the case anymore, because we really have kicked it into high gear, especially in the last couple of years. One thing that keeps coming up when I started in the industry, and I know I'm the newbie on this panel, I've only been in it for about 8 years, was everyone wanted to talk about AI and machine learning and all that kind of stuff. And I really wasn't all the way there. It was a cool buzzword. It was probably great from a sales standpoint and all that kind of stuff, but did it really improve our residents or our prospects' experiences? Probably not at the beginning. Now, I think that it really is starting to. I think that the technology has grown so quickly and has learned so fast and all that kind of stuff that you can't have a personalized, direct approach using some of those tools. And that's the one that I'm most excited about, is starting to leverage some more automation. I keep saying that word, but using creative ways to use AI, machine learning, previous experiences to create a really nice, easy, automated experience for both parties, I think is going to be huge going forward. And I'm excited to see where it goes in the next little bit.
Awesome. Virginia, we'll have you next up for this one.
Yeah, and now as a technology company and a SaaS, and forget those of you that don't know what SaaS means, because I did not know what SaaS meant before I joined Entrata almost 3 years ago, as software as a service. Entrata happens to be a technology company that is in the apartment industry, right? So we build technology like a lot of our competitors and other people in the space. And I say all the time, you got to make it easy to lease an apartment. So that's our job, is whether it's the customer, your customer, which is your Sherry and Gray's customer, which is the prospect, that's going to be a seamless process for them to apply. It's going to be easy. Or for the leasing team and the site level team, it's going to be super easy for them to do it. If it's not easy, they'll bolt. They just do. They want things streamlined. And that's because what their expectation is. The new truth is that you're competing against the last best experience your customer had. It used to be that we were against against the next door apartment community. What are they doing? What are we doing? What's the one across the street doing? And how are we all comparing each other? Now it is forget that. Now you're competing against major brands, and you look at something like Apple and how revolutionary it was for them to take away the register. That's not that crazy, right? And I will speak so highly of RangeWater, who is a client of ours, and they use mobile maintenance because they wanted their teams to be able to take a service request from anywhere and not tell the prospect, oh, you can go back to your house and call, or you can go on your website, or you can log into the portal. They're like, no, I'm going to do it right here on my phone, take care of it. It creates a great experience if you're standing there with a prospect giving a tour, and then the resident on the other side of that conversation is going, oh, great, done. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So a lot of this, a lot of the stuff that we're building out is to sort of, copy and implement things that are going on outside of our industry and things that just customers are demanding. That's the space we want to be in.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Sherry, what are your thoughts?
I agree. So, I said earlier that, creating efficiencies for our teams is where technology is. But the other thing about that is the analytics that come with that, right? Like, so the more automation and the more data we have, the better off we can service our customers and predict what the next thing. So I would like to see us continue to fine tune this data so that we can start having more of a predictive management style versus because that allows us to surprise and delight our customers. If we know that they've had their air conditioner go out 3 times, we know that we have to work harder for that renewal. So, and so how do we pull that data out? I think that's really where I want us to continue to move. But like Virginia said, we've got to refine the processes and make sure they're all easy. I preach day and night. It's all about the customer experience and the user experience, because if those two things are not easy, and people, we can buy a car on our phone today. Like, let's make sure that we're easy to do business. You don't have to come in and sign a 14-page lease anymore, right? Making sure that and when I say user experience, I mean everything from your front doors locks and your access to the community, to how you pay your rent and how you put in a service request and how we respond to those things. So I think just the easier we make it for both sides of that to do, then we will win.
Love that. Mike, wrap it up here for us, sir.
Yeah, definitely love the concept of making it easy for the customer. We've traditionally rented apartments in one way for many years, and Gray had mentioned it kind of forced us to change. I think that's huge. I think one of the things that I talked to someone recently, and they said, well, COVID's over, we're kind of getting rid of this and that. And I'm like,
COVID's over. Yeah.
Time out, huge mistake. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
If COVID ends tomorrow, a lot of the methods and the things that we put into place today aren't going away. We're not taking a step back. They're here to stay. People realize that you can rent an apartment online. People are now, it's common to not even see the apartment, tour the apartment in person. So that is not going away. So we have to be prepared to sell the way that they want to be sold to, make it easy without losing the personalization. So I know with our product, that's what we try to do, is we try to create this personalization using video. So there's just little things that you can do to say, we're using technology, but we're not losing the personal touch.
Yep, absolutely.
Great points, Mike. So since we're talking technology and, Mike, I'm glad you brought up personalization and how everything is shifted to the digital world. Here's another issue facing organizations today. So, communicating the value of your communities to your prospects, and honestly, even current residents on the retention side, it can be like an art form that some firms struggle with. So when it comes to storytelling and personalization, how does telling your community story and storytelling play a role in how you're communicating your value to your prospects and also in retaining current residents? So Virginia, if you'd like to lead us off with this one.
Yeah, I think what's always amazed me, just on the side note of not having any prospects anymore of my own on like renters, is that I think what Entrata has always done really well is they've brought their brand, brought their customers into the brand. And since so many folks have been with us since the beginning, they have this real dedication to it. So, but that is something, that's a magic you can create, at any property. Like Sherry said, it's about knowing your demographic. It's about knowing what they want. And then recreating those small, surprise and delights. I love the term silently awesome. Like, when you're telling people that you're great, you might not be great, but when you're doing things that are small and making an impact, and then they're going on social media or they're telling their friends, and you're not gonna believe what my apartment community did. They noticed on, Facebook that I was, going through this hard time at work, or they knew that, I hear this all the time, that things that our sales team are doing that, I don't even use y'all, but I put something on social media. So therefore, somebody in our sales team that's been trying to get to know them sent them a little something, just, something very small, but it was personalized. And that personalization starts with knowing, like we've been saying, knowing who your customer is. And it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on in our industry. There was a show in Las Vegas. I just got back from Las Vegas speaking with the All-Stars on Tuesday. And there was a show years ago in A&E called The King of Cars. And it was the biggest used car dealership in the country. And they used to, and the show was on A&E, like I said before, but it's no longer there. You can see it on YouTube, I do believe. But they talked about their sales training, and their sales training was make a friend. That was it, make a friend. Then you sell your friend a car. I always think that's just so smart. And that is just something that a lot of folks don't get. I know when I was still an operator, I'd get, hey, my name is so-and-so, so-and-so, and I want to talk to you about this product I have. It's a toilet flap that's going to save you. I'm like, do we need to put a logo on it? I'm in marketing. I don't know anything to do with toilet flaps. It's like, if you would just have stopped and done a little teeny tiny bit of digging, you'd find out about me. You'd find out about a workflow, what I do, and who I am and who I work for. And that sort of stuff that makes such a big impact on people. I'm a huge fan of effort. I'd rather have effort than the ultimate expensive gift. I'd rather somebody go through a lot of trouble, make it very personal to me. And that's what builds, that's what continues to build that relationship.
Yeah, building that trust is huge.
Yep.
Love that, Virginia. Sherry, you're up next.
When I started leasing apartments, and Virginia said 30 years, and I say I've been in the business over 20, because it sounds better.
Yeah, it does sound better. I'll start doing that too.
When I started leasing apartments, I remember that the person that trained me said, Sherry, you need to learn 2 things about each and every prospect that comes in the door. And it could be any 2 things, and they're going to tell you these 2 things, but it's your job to remember them, right? So it could be that I have a dog named Lucy, or it could be that, my daughter is in college, whatever it is. And so when you said, how do we share our company's value, our value is different to each person. Right. And so we have to know what they want in order to be able to share what our value is. Right. And so if they tell us that, they have a dog, then we know that they put some value and stock into having, a pet friendly community and maybe a dog park or whatever. So I think it's really customizing. And like Virginia said, we have to approach it from this perspective of every single resident's value is going to be different. And so, I think we really push to make sure that we're responding quickly, because we know that people want immediate response, and how we handle those kind of things are certainly very important to them. And resolution, our mission is to create fulfilling experiences. It's pretty broad. Like that could mean just about anything, but it's like taking the time to get to know what those certain, and people tell you what's important to them. I mean, if you just listen. And so I think that's the key to us, and what value. And then we offer so many different services and value enhancers to somebody's life. You just have to figure out which one fits that person.
That's great. Mike, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's storytelling is what we do. Video storytelling is what we do, and it was interesting. So I sold technology for many years before I joined the team this last May. And the first day I walked in, and I see some of our sales reps in the corner doing personalized videos. I was like, the first thing that hit me was like, we use our product to sell our product.
Yeah.
I felt like an idiot for not realizing that beforehand. But I'm old and slow at times.
That's
So
genius. Yeah.
yes, it's awesome. But to see the personalization on it and tell your story and give them the ability to tell their story to their customers. I tell people all the time, you want to see something about us, you can look at our product, but go to our website and take a look, like at one of our co-founders, the video that he talks about kind of his background. Sherry heard the story when we were in Asheville, and she was like, I think I'm gonna cry. But it's true. Be authentic, tell your story, humanize it, become Virginia, you're make a friend, sell a friend. I love that. Like I tell people all the time, you've got my cell phone number. If you need to call me on Saturday night at 11:59, feel free to do it. I probably won't answer because I have it on snooze or on silent, but you're more than welcome to call. And I think just being human and telling your story, it comes out as genuine. That's one of the things, you have to be genuine when you're telling your story.
Yep.
Love that. Gray, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think of things, as marketers, we're all storytellers at its core, right? And I'm thinking back to like the textbook term, the textbook term for what a brand is, and that would be, a promise. And there's certain elements that create, that foster together to create that brand, and that's your brand DNA. Well, I think, and my word got stolen in the chat and via Mike, is this day and age, a lot of it's about humanizing your brand, like it's been said before. And when you think about the customer journey as a story and how we're, telling the story, it's all about how that customer, that prospect fits into the story and how you get creative with how you're able to leverage that. I love what Sherry said about, a dog named Lucy and stuff like that. Those little things to humanize yourself, to humanize your brand, really go a long way. And I think, kind of take down the wall of this is I'm a customer, they're the supplier, there's a transaction going on here. It's much more than that. So I completely agree with what was said. Storytelling is at the core of what we're able to do, and convincing, creating a convincing story, creating a compelling story, and how someone is able to fit into it is obviously, the basis of our day-to-day responsibilities as marketers.
Love that. Thank you, Gray. Well, for the sake of time, we're going to jump into our final question here. Wrapping things up in one sentence, and it's okay if it's more than one sentence, but generally in one sentence, what's your advice for multifamily leaders right now? Sherry, we'll let you kick this one off.
So I'm a rule follower, so I made it into one sentence.
How are you?
I think that, so my advice is to make sure your basics are always in place and accept that our industry is constantly evolving.
That's awesome. Mike, what you got?
I would say be empathetic, and be flexible.
All right, Gray, what's your word of advice?
Don't get so siloed into no one's doing that in multifamily. Well, why not? Look elsewhere, look at other industries, and there's things that you can glean that would be super successful if implemented correctly in our industry.
That's a great point. Looking at other industries is huge. I mean, as a marketer myself, I always find myself looking at what are not just competitors doing, but what are other industries doing. So love that point, Gray. Virginia, your turn to wrap it all up for us.
No pressure. I always wanted to be the person that knew all the offerings in the multifamily space. I always thought it was super important to be at the conference table and talking to folks, people, hey, have y'all heard of this? Or you're in a third party pitch and somebody brings something up and you know it. So my advice is very simple, is take the demo, talk to as many people as you can. Somebody's going to reach out to you. You might not need that product now or that solution now, because you might not have that problem at the moment. But when you do, when something does come up, you're going to feel so much better and you're going to be able to build your career because you are so informed and you're the one informing other folks. And, there's so many new solutions to some of our age-old problems, and the industry is changing, like we said, because the customers are demand it. Just, take a minute. What I did, this is more than a sentence. I know that Sherry's always going to do better than I am, and I'm okay with that. But what I did is I would give an hour a week to demos, an hour on my calendar. So you got 15 minutes to kind of show me what it is. And if we want to dig in a little bit deeper, we could. That's 4 a week. That's so easy. So take the demo. A lot of stuff out there.
That Awesome. Well, we have time for just one more question. So I think this one is also an issue that's relevant for everyone. So what are some of the unique ways that you've seen your communities drive resident retention? So Sherry, we'll toss it over to you for this one.
I think it's going to go back to a lot of things we talked about. So when I was thinking about this, I thought about surprising and delighting our residents, like anticipating what their needs are and what their kind of responses will be. Making sure that we take every opportunity that we can to interact and to delight our customers. And then, really be available and listen and, really understand their perspective, because that's how you resolve the issue. If you don't understand it, you'll never get it resolved. So just making sure that we listen and that we don't, sometimes it's really easy especially when somebody's upset, for us to kind of want to hide. But I think, just getting out there and addressing it right away. So urgency is always, to me, the most important thing, is like, let's just get it done right now. Get shit done. Sorry.
All good. Great. What do you got?
When it comes to retention and renewals, I like to think of a renewal as a prospect that just knows a whole lot about you already.
Yeah.
So I think that it's you can't get too siloed into one way or the other. One thing that our teams are doing a lot of is they're kind of starting to leverage our CRM more so for our residents just as much as they are for our prospects. And we're working with our CRM provider to build out some more of those efficiencies to make our CRM more than just a marketing product, but also a communication tool that's beneficial in both sides of the business as marketers.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, the customer journey never ends. It's not right when they move in, right? So great point, Gray. Mike, we'll let you jump in next for this one.
Absolutely. Thank you. One of the things that I think was important, I actually watched a webinar yesterday with Lisa Trozine, who's in the audience today. And one of the things that she mentioned, like, came to light and jumped out at me was the majority of people make a decision to not renew within 48 hours of moving in. Like,
Wow.
that blew my mind. So what that says to me is, it's that dating process. You have to continue to date your spouse. You have to continue to date your residents. It starts prior to them moving in. You should be thinking about, what can I do to ensure that these people have a great experience at my community and want to stay? And that begins probably before they move in on day one.
For sure. All right, Virginia, once again, wrapping up.
Same thing, communication. People hate surprises, and they'll remind you of every bad surprise in the industry. We've all had that resident that came in and they'd lived there for 6 years. When I moved in, there was a stain on my countertop. When I moved in, they will remind you of every bad surprise that they had. And there's so many tools out there that you have to communicate. And, the statistics and all the surveys show the only time they really care, and not care, but really want you to call them specifically and sit down face to face, is if you're raising their rent. And what are we doing right now as an industry? We are raising rent. So take a step back. We're going to talk about an old school process, the good old telephone, schedule an appointment to come in, have something for them to drink there, have a conversation across a desk. That stuff, is going to be huge in saving your team a ton of headaches before you use technology like automation just to go out and send that $400, $300, $150 renewal. And a lot of folks won't pick up the phone and call you and ask you about it. They'll just give notice and talk dirty about you in the parking lot. So refine those communications. Get it. Know when to layer in the old school stuff with the new fancy stuff.
Love it. Well, thanks for closing us out, Virginia. I just want to give a huge shout out to our awesome panelists. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights for this year ahead. Quick last note, this webinar recording will be in your inbox at some point this afternoon, so be on the lookout for that. Lastly, thank you to our audience for tuning in today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and an amazing 2022. So we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good one.